Welcome back to part 2 of the Siberian Bobcat. I'm using a 276 new pastel to add some hair to that back right leg of our cat. We're not going to put a lot of detail on this leg because not a lot of it is visible. I'm using the black charcoal pencil to add a little darkness, little dark areas, and now I'm using my white 211 to add a few white hairs to that leg. You could also use your white pastel pencil and your number 47 Conte pencil if you'd rather. Now I'm using the tip of my charcoal pencil to add some black in there. It kind of helps to separate those hairs out, give it a more realistic appearance. Now we're going to base coat the front leg with 707 Rembrandt light gray. Just using a gentle pressure, light pressure, cross-hatch that color all over that leg. Gives us a base coat to add more color on top of. And now I'm going to add 505.8 ultramarine blue Rembrandt underneath and around that leg as the background, and that's going to represent our snow. So we want to put that in first before we add the hair on the cat's leg. Cross hatch it and make sure it's nice and even. And now I'm using a Rembrandt 100.5 white over the blue, and that's going to represent our snow. So I'm just adding a little bit of that over the blue. Now I'm adding a base coat, another coat rather, of 409.7 burnt umber over the leg, just like we did on the face, to get that nice brown color on the leg. I'm using the end of my stick and cross hatching back and forth all the way up to the shoulder of our bobcat. Now I'm going to start placing the spots on the leg using my charcoal pencil, putting in a little detail. So I'm putting in the placement. You can see that when we did our initial drawing, we put in the spots, but they've been covered up some by colors. We need to make them a little darker. So I started by using my charcoal pencil, but I'm going to come back with my 229 New Pastel and use that. It makes them a little bit darker. So I'm going to start putting those in. It's a little time consuming, but take your time and be accurate. Make sure you're putting them in according to the way the hair grows on the cat. Now I also, to make this look a little more realistic in the way it actually looks on the cat with the different colors of fur, I'm using a 353 New Pastel to blend in with that black. So it keeps the value of the darkness of the spots, but also adds some color variation to the spots as well. Now here I'm using some 263 Indian Red as well. So we're using a variety of colors. And this is the 223 Burnt Umber. That wasn't quite dark enough. So I'm going back to the Cordovan for that. So I'll rotate among these colors. To get the exact look that I want for this leg. I'm going to speed up this section while I add the spots. As you can see, you may have noticed that I hold these colors in my hand and then just kind of rotate back and forth between them as I see necessary. We're back in normal time now. And I'm using my 259 gray to go over the fur. The gray helps to blend the colors together and provides another base coat for us to color on top of. And I'm putting it basically in the center of the leg where the shadow is. And that also helps the leg appear more round. It's called the core shadow. So the core shadow runs down the center of a cylindrical object, which is what this leg is. So that's where we're putting the majority of the gray. Now I'm back to adding more spots on the cat's leg. We're working down the leg. I've sped this up a bit. I think you get the idea of how to add the spots. Now we're down to the end of the foot where the paw is, and I'm using my 353 cordovan to delineate where the paw separates. A few more spots, but this cat has a very big paw. He's made for running in the snow. I'm using the Indian red. A few to put under some of that black, put some of that color down. But as we get to the end, we want to delineate between his toes, actually. So we're putting more brown towards the end of his foot. One of the things I want to make sure that I portray in this painting is how big this foot is, that he is just reaching out to propel himself forward. So I'm carefully coloring those toes, and I'm separating them by using the 229 black. To blend this all together, this leg, I'm going to use a light coat of the 707 7.7 Rembrandt. Just going lightly over it. And that helps make the area more cohesive and blends it together. Now I'm going to use my 263 Indian red to blend a little brown color on the bottom edge of the leg. And I'm also going to intensify a few of the spots with 229 black. Now I'm working out how I'm going to add the fur to the leg. So I'm using my white pastel pencil, putting in a few hair. I'm not sure that they're bright enough. And also we have to be aware that the black spots are hair as well. So these grow together on the coat of the cat. So I've decided that I'm going to use my 211 white new pastel to add brighter fur. And my pastel is very sharp so that I get those little hairs added in there. So I'm going to use the white to add the hair, and I'm going to use the black new pastel to come back in and draw out some black hair into the white, and that kind of integrates it all together. And that's how I'm going to complete this leg. So it's going to be a little time consuming, but it's worth it to take your time and not rush through it to get it just perfect. So here I'm using the end of my 229 new pastel and adding the black hair. Now you might ask, why aren't you using a charcoal pencil? Well, this is blacker, and I think in this case I need it to emphasize the spots that are on our bobcat. So now we're back in real time, and I'm using the end of my 253 cordovan to put some brown, to pull some brown hairs in as well. The most important thing to me in painting this is it to be random and irregular like fur grows. The tendency is to make things all the same and the hairs all in a row, and animal hair just doesn't grow that way. So we have to be careful that we make things random and that we keep the direction of the fur with every stroke we take. Here I'm using 276 buff. Slightly different color. It's a little warmer, a little more beigey. Adds a very nice look to the hair. Now I'm back to using white. Now I'm also using my 100 white pastel pencil to add some hair. As I've said before, if you're more comfortable using a pencil, then by all means use it, and also use your 47 Conte pencil. And then the black to get a few black hairs in. Here I'm using the Conte pencil, number 47, and I'm also going to use the 276 new pastel stick. I want to add some blue into this area to reflect back the colors that are in the snow and also give some depth to this shadow. So for this, I'm using Create a Color number 151 Glacier Blue. I love this color, and it works very well on the fur, and we're going to use it again in the shadow areas under our bobcat. And now I'm back to using black and the spots. I'm going to speed up this next section a little bit as I complete the fur and the spots on the cat's arm. I think you guys have the idea of how it's done and how I proceed. So enjoy. I've sped this up as well. This is more fur. We're working down towards the bottom of the paw. I've used the brighter, I'm using 299 white or 299 light gray, excuse me. And these hairs as I work on this side of the cat's leg, but I'm using white, 211 white on the top of the cat's leg. And I'm using white pencil as well, working brown in and among the spots as needed. This is the 223 burnt umber that I'm using right now. And now I'm using the 276 buff. Now, as we get down towards the end of the cat's leg to his paw, I'm using the bright white, putting in those little hairs. Taking my time as I do it. They're very short, so we want to keep that in mind. I'm rotating my stick to make sure it's still sharp. I'm putting in little touches of brown with my 353 cordovan here and there as needed. I'm using the tip of it so I can just put a little bit here and there. Could use the other end of the stick. Here I'm using a little bit of 253 cocoa brown to warm up that area on the top side of the leg. And using the charcoal pencil, put some very fine lines in. And here I'm adding a little more Delft blue. Really like the way that looks. Just little touches. It adds a lot of variety to the fur. I'm going to add another layer of our 709.7, our lighter medium color brown, to the shoulder, and I'm going to build up some color. Now on top of that, I'm going to also use some 353 New Pastel, which is the cordovan color. So I'm just cross-hatching that. I'm not using the pointed end, I'm using the flat end. And now I'm just cross-hatching it back and forth. And now over top of that, I'm putting some gray, the 259, dark gray just a little bit. I'm using the bottom end of it rather than the tip. Turned it over to get it a little bit darker. I want to use that. It just kind of helps to push those colors in and to blend it. And I'm cross-hatching it. Now, I don't believe that's quite dark enough. So I'm going to add some 223 burnt sienna. So I'm kind of using everything I have in my toolbox to get it darker. Because these are hard pastels, they're new pastels, so they're hard pastels, you can use them on top of each other like that, and it just kind of pushes it into the fabric of the paper, into the nap. The area is not quite dark enough yet for me. It is in the shadow. So I'm going to add some more color. So over what we've already put down, I'm adding 538.5 Mars Violet, which is a great color. And I'm just cross-hatching that over the shoulder all the way up to the back of the head. I'm leaving that brightly lit area of the back alone. I'm using the bottom edge of a New Pastel 353 Cordovan, which is a Mars Violet, just like the 538.5, but it's just a New Pastel, so I'm using it to add a little more color up at the top. Now things aren't quite dark enough yet, so I'm going to use a 704.3 dark gray Rembrandt to go over this area, the shadow area of the cat's shoulder, to darken that down. The Rembrandts are more highly pigmented, and so it is easier to do that. They're softer, and so they have more pigment that comes off. Now I'm adding a little more 538.5 Mars Violet to that area and blending that all together, cross-hatching it back and forth. That's looking really good. Now, in this little top area of the back where the sun is striking the cat very brightly, I am base coating that with 253 Cocoa Brown. It's a very brightly lit area, which is a great contrast to the shadows we've been working on. I also brought that down a bit to the back, kind of blending it in with the shadow area that we previously painted. Now that I have that dark in on the shoulder, I'm going to use my light gray pencil. My 7, I believe it's a 720 Carbothello pencil. And I'm putting in a few hairs on the leg with that. Now here I've switched to my light gray new pastel, which is number 299, to put some of those hairs in. I believe this is a little bit brighter, and so I'm going to add those and probably use my black new pastel, the end of the stick, or charcoal pencil to add some black hair in between the white to kind of break that up. So here I have the charcoal pencil. I'm just going to pull up just a few hairs. It just breaks up that lighter area. And here's the new pastel. Now I've decided to go a bit brighter, so I've grabbed my 211 white new pastel, and I'm adding a few brighter hairs to the arm. And you can see I do this very carefully, very deliberately. I'm just using a pastel holder here to hold chalk, but this is the white new pastel. I sped that up a little bit. Now I'm back in real time using my black new pastel to add some black fur into the arm. Now, using my reference photo, I'm very careful to add the spots where they appear on the cat, very random. So I'm just placing them on the shoulder. And I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I think you get the idea. I want to enrich and deepen this color on the shoulder a little more, so I'm adding my 305 spruce blue. I'm adding some of that dark blue color in this area, darkening it down. And I'm also going to add some brown with my 223 burnt umber and a bit of 353 cordovan. Just going to get this darker in this area. Now to get it even a little darker, I'm using the bottom of my 229 New Pastel black, adding that in. And the reason I'm using that, I'm just pushing that color in. Here I'm using the 229 New Pastel to darken up this area right behind the ear of the cat as well. And this is my 259 dark gray, blending those colors together in that area. Adding some more black, putting in some of the stripes that I see. This area is very dark because it's in shadow. So I'm stroking in using the edge, putting in the black hair that I see in my reference photo. Here I'm going to add a little more 353 cordovan, darkening, continuing to darken the fur. It's a very rich color. I like the way that's looking. I'm using my 253 Cocoa Brown to add a few light hairs to this area of the back. This is where the sun is beginning to strike the back of the cat, so I'm going to use this. This is a nice light warm brown. Going to add some darker hairs with the edge of the 353. I'm going to take those hairs a bit brighter with the 233 Raw Sienna, which is a nice gold color. So I'm using the edge. And then when it gets dull, I rotate it around. Look how just adding that little bit of sunlight color just really brightens that up and adds that three-dimensional quality that we're looking for. This is 276 buff. I'm going to add a few here, and this will even make it brighter. You could use your Conte pencil number 47 if you prefer to use a pencil. So I'm just adding a few hairs. I'm not adding a lot with that. That really brightened it up. Now I'm beginning to place the hairs in the back of the head. This is the 299 New Pastel. Here again, you could also use your 720 Carbothello light gray pencil. Continuing to use the 299, just really bringing our cat to life. These are the details that's really going to make your painting spectacular. And again, I can't stress enough to be sure and go in the direction the hair grows. If it's not comfortable for your hand, then turn your painting, whatever you have to do to get those hairs to go the way they grow. And take your time. If you get tired, take a break, come back to it. I'm really liking the way that looks. Using my charcoal pencil to just come in between some of those hairs, separate them a little bit. Sometimes they get a little clumpy and I want to separate them. And so I'll use my charcoal pencil for that. I'm also using the 211 white to make these a little bit brighter in that area. Join me for part 3 as we continue on with the bobcat and finish the shoulder and move on to the back and the background of this beautiful animal.